In xCP Designer 2.1, the ability to use session parameters was introduced. We're now going to demonstrate how to use a session parameter to hold the last policy edited. We will use another xCP Designer 2.1 feature called Page Fragments. A session parameter stores data that can be shared between various elements of an application at runtime and persisted between browser sessions. A page fragment is a component that contains a collection and layout of widgets and/or interactions that you can add to various different pages without having to reconfigure the layout and the bindings. Page fragments eliminate the need to add the same collection of related widgets to multiple pages, and you only have to configure them once. Page fragments can be created for either the application level or the object model instance level. So a common requirement for a case management application is to remember the last case the user was working on, even if they close their browser and reopen it. In this section of the tutorial, we'll cache the policy ID in a session parameter, and we'll configure that as a cookie, and modify the policy search page to show the last edited policy page fragment with a button to reopen it. So the first step is to define the session parameter that stores the ID of the last edited policy. In the xCP Navigator, select the User Interface tab. Then right-click on the Session Parameters node at the bottom and select New Session Parameter. For label, enter Last Policy ID. Check the box for Stored in a Cookie, then click Finish. And close the Last Policy ID editor since we're okay with the last policy ID being stored as a string. The second step is to modify the Edit Policy page so that the session parameter is updated whenever a policy is edited. Let me show you another new feature of xCP Designer. At the very top right of xCP Designer, click the search box and enter Edit. You'll notice several artifacts are listed that begin with Edit. This demonstrates another useful feature added in xCP Designer 2.1. Click Edit Policy to open the Edit Policy instance page. Expand the Interactions tab. Now click on the Session Parameters interaction so you can configure it. In the Properties pane at the bottom, expand the CIA node and select Last Policy ID. In the Expressions box, enter policy.id. Then click outside the box to register what you entered. Save and close the policy editor. The next step is to create a page fragment for the display of policy information, which can then be added to the policy search page, that's our home page, to show the details of the last policy edited. We'll later use the same page fragment on each task page. In practice, we'd probably also create page fragments for the claim and vehicle objects too. But for this tutorial, we'll just focus on the policy page fragment for now. In the User Interface tab, navigate to and right-click Business Object UI and then Policy. Then select New Page Fragment. For the Instance Pages section, the one labeled Generate Widgets and Bindings, select the View Policy instance page. For label, change it to View Policy Details and click Finish. Rearrange the widgets to match the same order as you have them on the Create Policy and Edit Policy pages. Select the End Date widget. Then, in the Properties pane at the bottom, in the Style tab, change the date style to Date Only. Then save and close the View Policy Details editor. Now navigate to and open the Application UI Policy Search page. In the Layout tab, click in the column box that contains the button widgets at the far right. In the Properties column pane at the bottom, set the column contents to horizontal alignment, left align. For width, set it to 300 pixels. Right-click the column containing the search button and select Insert Column on Right. In the Properties column pane at the bottom, for orientation, change it from vertical to horizontal and set the width to 80%. From the Widgets pane on the right, drag a Page Fragment widget onto the new column. In the Properties Page Fragment pane at the bottom, for ID, enter Fragment_policy. For label, enter policy details. Click the Selector button, the ... button, under the Page Fragment section and select View Policy Details as the ID of the fragment. Then click Finish. The fragment widget on the page will change to reflect the policy fields. At the right, under the Page Fragment Input Mapping section, the table should have a few options showing. To get xCP Designer to update the internal table so that the options are available to configure, close the Policy Search Editor to save the changes. When we reopen it, the table should include the options. Open the Policy Search page again and select the Page Fragment widget again. In the Properties Page Fragment pane at the bottom, under the Page Fragment Input Mapping section, in the table in the column under Input Name, select the ID entry. Now scroll down to the expression box below the table and click the Expression Wizard button. In the top pane, navigate to and select Session Parameters CIA. In the bottom pane, select Last Policy ID. Then click OK. Notice the syntax of the expression that was created. Add a button to the right side of the Page Fragment widget. Set the ID to button_open_last_policy. For label, enter open last policy. Under the action setting at the right, have it invoke specifically the edit policy page. And scroll down in the bottom and in the Object ID instance pages, use the Expression Wizard again, and in the top pane, select Session Parameters CIA. In the bottom pane, select Last Policy ID, and then click OK. Now close the Policy Search Editor.